So I wanted to speak more about the Premier League title race because obviously Arsenal's draw with Nottingham Forest meant that they're now 13 points behind us. And, it looks certain that Liverpool will win a 20th league title and, maybe get back on our perch a bit. But there's been a lot of narrative online about how Liverpool have been a lot luckier than other teams, namely Arsenal. And I just wanted to know whether you buy into that because there's arguments about red cards, there's arguments about injuries. But is there any element of truth to that, or do you even give that any thought really?
I think there's always you need a certain element of luck in title races. I don't think you can deny that. And I mean, you've just had a week there where Liverpool have played Manchester City and Newcastle, and they've both had two of the best centre forwards in world football. They've missed just those games and then played in the games after. So there's a little bit of good fortune there. But I think the idea that Liverpool's entire title win is based on luck is pushing it a little bit far. I think you got to look back to kind of where Arsenal were before the injuries set in, and they were already kind of between 7 and 9 points behind at that point. That number had kind of gone up and down over that period. So they still had, I remember we were talking around then actually about what the title race looked like. And at any point when you open up a gap that big, it's very, very hard to claw it back because you were dependent on, if you're Arsenal, Liverpool falling apart a little bit. And then obviously they would have to go on that winning run. And it never, even before the injuries, never looked like it was coming, to be honest. So I'm not so sure Liverpool have necessarily needed that little bit of good fortune. And I would also push back on the idea that the injuries are completely tied to luck. I mean, I was quite critical of Liverpool last season for the injury record they had. I think that's something you can control with the type of football you play. And again, doesn't mean Arsenal are suddenly really poor in the way that they look after their players, having had a couple of years of great availability. They've maybe had it's really gone badly recently, but they've generally, I think luck has played a part there. But it's, I don't think Liverpool, it's, all completely landed in the lap or anything like that. And also, I think the key point to say as well, and I think where Liverpool supporters should maybe embrace this narrative around luck is, I don't think they've had that much actually in recent years. I think they've been quite unlucky. I mean, to miss out on 2 Premier League titles when you've had 90+ point totals, and then to the couple of Champions League finals, one where Mo Salah goes off injured in the first 20 minutes, where they played really well at the start, and then Gareth Bale throws in an overhead kick from miles out, and then obviously the one where Courtois saves absolutely everything, and Liverpool is so dominant in that game, but just get quite unlucky in it. So, if Liverpool have been a little bit lucky, and I think you've got to acknowledge there's a small part of luck there, then they've absolutely earned it. But I also don't think, as I said, that it's been the decisive factor, because I think regardless of whether Arsenal had got those injuries or not, the gap had already got too big, and Liverpool have been too consistent since then to have given Arsenal any hope of catching them.
Yep. And then there's also been a narrative that I've seen recently online, which has been talking about how maybe this is a much less competitive season. But I mean, do you buy into that at all? Because there's a bunch of teams competing for the Champions League. There's a gap at the top of the table, and maybe the relegation battle has already been decided. But again, the title might be decided by less than 90 points. And people have been saying that, Liverpool have just won it when the Premier League's had an off season or when teams aren't as competitive.
But I don't kind of understand that narrative either, because if Liverpool are getting fewer points to win it, that surely means the Premier League itself is competitive, because more teams are capable of taking points off the sides near the top. So it doesn't really kind of stack up for me, that argument. And I would say, I think it's, the teams who are going to get relegated, we can't kind of shy away from that. And this has been 2 seasons on the bounce. They've been incredibly poor, to be honest. But I think upwards of that, you look through some of the sides in that kind of middle part of the league, and the kind of 5 or 6, 7, 8 teams who are competing for Champions League football next season. There's an unbelievable amount of quality. I mean, you go to pick out Brighton, Baleba, Mitoma, absolutely brilliant players. Bournemouth, Kirkez, Semenyo, again, fantastic players. I mean, West Ham are near the relegation zone. They've got Jared Bowen and Lucas Paquetá. This is unbelievable quality. Fulham, Anthony Robinson, Iwobi's playing out of his skin at the moment. So I think there's an unbelievable amount of quality in the league. And it's the reason I think that kind of this season in particular that a point away from home has become a good result again after a few years of it definitely not being, is because there is so much quality in that middle part of the league, and you can go away to a Fulham maybe, or a Brighton or a Bournemouth and think that a point is just not the worst result in the world. And Liverpool, point of Aston Villa is a really good example of that. So I think it's a really high quality league, and I don't think Liverpool have benefited from that in any way. I think that the one thing they've benefited from is kind of Arsenal and City's collapse happening kind of simultaneously, then both having issues in the same season. But as I say, it's nice for them to have earned that look, because they've lacked that over the recent years. And one thing you would say, if there is any fortune involved, or it's anything about timing or whatever, is that Liverpool have, look back, they've challenged for the league title in 5 of the last 7 seasons. And if you do that consistently, if you keep challenging for the league in that many seasons, you are probably going to put yourself in a position where something like this happens and you get a bit fortunate to kind of step in. But there's no fortune in being there consistently. That is something you achieve through being brilliantly run and making smart decisions. And that's why Liverpool are there, to capitalise on Arsenal and City having a few problems.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Man City have probably skewed the perception of what a good Premier League points tally is, and especially if the league is more competitive, maybe it's not an indication of less quality if the points total is less.
I would kind of like, just to come in on that, sorry, I wouldn't mind it if league seasons going forward were a little bit more like this. I mean, it is, there's something about, needing 95 points and having to thinking that a draw in any week is an absolute disaster that is not great, really. You like to see sides being able to take points off the top side. You want those away games to be tough again, like it kind of used to be. I think mid-80s is kind of where you want the title winning total to be, because, as I say, sides were getting like 97, 98 points, and even though Liverpool were involved in that, it was exciting at the time. It is a bit much, isn't it? That the level of wins you have to put together was almost ludicrous, really. So if it does level out a bit more, and I think because there's so much quality in that middle part now, maybe this will be a bit of a theme for the coming years. If it does level out to that, I think it probably makes for a more enjoyable season, really.